Boxing Ego here. If you like this video, make sure you hit the like button and also subscribe to the channel and hit the bell icon on the top of your screen to get notified when the latest new content drops. What up, fight world? It's your boy Ego and I'm back with some more boxing. Make sure you guys like and subscribe. Now, off the heels of Thurman Garcia, which was a fight that good build up, did good numbers, set attendance record, did strong ratings, it looks like, from the forecast. And as far as the fight, it looked like it, like, for me, this is just my opinion, it started off very exciting. Round one, I'm like, damn, this is Thurman Porter part 2, and it was real explosive. But then as the fight wore on, it fizzled out a little bit to me. And I'm not complaining, because at the end of the day, we needed to see this fight, and we see the matchup. We needed to see this matchup. It was a unification in the big fight. However, another big fight, Kell Brook versus Errol Spence Jr. They don't have a definitive date. There's a conflicting soccer game at the Sheffield venue that they're trying to use, but it's going to be, they say, May 27th through June, first week of June, somewhere in there. I'll try to update you guys. Now, ESPN did an exclusive interview with Kell Brook. It's a great interview with him. I'm going to read some pull quotes. I've linked to the ESPN article in the description box, so you can head over there and read it in its entirety. And Kell Brook was talking about, after he gets past Errol Spence, he would be looking at fighting a Keith Thurman, right? And Kell Brook said, Garcia and Thurman are both very good champions, and it was very hard to split them, but I thought Thurman would win the fight because Garcia had not faced a true welterweight before. He goes on to say, Thurman is a big welterweight who has competed at that weight his whole career. I would definitely like to fight Thurman because I want to unify the division before I move up. I think that would be a very explosive fight, me and Keith Thurman. He says something, I spoke to him backstage before I fought Sean Porter, and he said, you're the boy from England, I'm looking forward to seeing you fight. So he made it clear, before he moves up, he wants to unify the division, and I'm all for it. I mean, you could have a unification match, but the way the belts are split up, I don't know if he would stick around long enough, because Pacquiao has a belt. He has the WBO belt, so I don't know if he'd be able to do like Golovkin. Golovkin, if he beats Jacobs, he'll consolidate the WBA belt, and then he only has one belt to get, and that's Billy Joe Saunders' WBO belt. So I would love to see Kell Brook versus the winner of Spence versus Brook, or Keith Thurman versus the winner of Spence Brook. Kell Brook, in this article, he goes on to talk about the Pacquiao Amir Khan potential fight, and he says, I don't know about fighting Amir Khan, and I don't really care anymore. I'm not stopping anything on my side from happening, and I've been willing to bend on matters like the purse split. If everything was transparent, every boxing fan in the world would be behind me on this matter. But I've got Errol Spence on my mind right now, but there's Keith Thurman, and there are other big fights out there for me other than Khan. If my career does end and Khan isn't on my record, I will be able to rest in peace, knowing that I've tried everything I could to give the fans the fight they wanted to see. He also goes on to say, I still believe Manny Pacquiao will stop Amir Khan. He's getting on a bit Manny, but he's still good enough, and there's enough energy in his legs, and he will still beat Khan. So he did a little fight prediction. And then finally, what he said about Errol Spence, he says, I don't believe he's fought anyone on my level, and I'm looking forward to taking care of him in my own backyard. I believe we'll both bring the best out of each other. Again, for the full ESPN article, it's linked in the description. So a lot. Keith Thurman, he talked about Amir Khan fighting Pacquiao potentially. That still hasn't been confirmed. And he talked about his actual opponent, his next opponent, his mandatory, with the IBF Errol, the Truth Spence Jr. And he says he hasn't fought anyone on my level, which is true. And he's looking forward to taking care of him in his backyard. So I'm looking forward to that fight, man. Both fighters seem very confident, and they're both going for it. I mean, you can't deny what he's saying. Errol Spence clearly hasn't fought anyone that we would consider as good. I mean, he hasn't even fought a champion, so you know what I mean, we can't say he's fought anyone as good as Kell Brook. but this is his big test. This is the opportunity he wanted. He's saying his hashtag man down. So I'm just looking forward to a good fight. I do think this is a true 50-50 fight, which is why I wanted to see it, to see what Errol Spence is really capable of. Like Kell Brook is saying, elite fights bring the best out of the other person usually. You know what I mean? Make you think, you're on your toes. You might have to adapt. You're at a deficit in terms of the crowd. It's his crowd. You're fighting in Sheffield, where he's from, where he started boxing, his gym. He's at the Prince Nassim gym. You know what I mean? So those are certain challenges you have to overcome. And anytime you go to enemy territory or the other person's hometown, you have to deal with, if it's a close fight, are they going to sway it towards the visitor? You know what I'm saying? If Errol Spence and let's say Errol Spence and Kell Brook traded knockdowns and then it was competitive as hell, like Ward Kovalev or something. I mean, are they going to give it to the visiting fighter? You know what I mean? You really have to make a stamp and have a dominant performances. And that's kind of what it is. And even still, we've seen in boxing where someone will have a dominant performance on a big scale, like Floyd Mayweather versus Canelo, and you still had a judge try to rob him and say it was a draw. There's no way, shape, unless you're like from Guadalajara and you have red hair or something and you just love Canelo or something, there's no way you could have said Mayweather versus Canelo was a rightful draw. You know what I'm saying? Canelo literally did nothing beyond the third round. He was getting embarrassed. He was getting uppercutted. Floyd was walking him down, had him on the ropes, was like probing at his solar plex at his stomach. He was just hitting him in the pit of the stomach. And then Canelo would bend down, hunch down, and then he'll sweep him with the right. It was just, he was throwing uppercuts and bopping his head. Like, no, there's no way you could have said that fight was a draw. So those are things you have to look forward, especially when you're traveling overseas. In my opinion, I thought Andre Dirrell did enough to beat Carl Froch, but they didn't see it like that over in the UK. You know what I mean? So it's just something you have to consider. You know what I mean? Kovalev feels that they gave Ward the fight because he's the American fighter, and it happened on the West Coast, and he's from California, Oakland, and the fight happened in Vegas. So, you know what I'm saying? You have to, as a road warrior, that's something you have to be prepared to deal with. You have to win in a fashion where it leaves no doubts. Obviously, a stoppage is the best possible thing. Errol Spence does have stoppage power. It's not like he doesn't have knockout power. He knows how to break people down. So I'm just looking forward to a good fight. Again, it's just like in the same vein as Garcia Thurman. It's a fight that needs to happen. And I like how Kell Brook is confident. Here's a picture of Kell Brook. He's already sparring, and he says he's gonna showcase in front of his hometown crowd and beat Spence Jr. Spence Jr. He's looking like the man. He's getting a lot of praise from guys like Peter Quillen, Floyd Mayweather, Freddie Roach, Adrian Broner, Robert Easter. A lot of people giving him praise. So it's gonna be an interesting fight. This fight kind of puts me in the mindset of, I keep saying this reference, but Jermall Charlo was the IBF champion at 154 before he moved up just recently. And Julian J. Rock Williams, the guy had been calling him out and finally got his opportunity. Now, Julian came up short. That doesn't mean Errol Spence will come up short because they're two different fighters, but it just puts me in the same mindset of this is the same type of fight. The Charlo was perceived as ducking, and Julian J. Rock Williams was looking like a wrecking ball. So we'll have to see what Errol Spence does with his opportunity at Kell Brook, right? And I'm just looking forward to it. It's a great fight. As far as what else Kell Brook was saying about Pacquiao and Amir Khan, you guys let me know your fight prediction. I'm not going to spend too much of my energy talking about that until I get a confirmation. I told you guys, it doesn't sound like Pacquiao and Bob Arum and Michael Conks and the whole squad is on the same page. It sounds like Bob Arum wants to make Jeff Horn fight, and Pacquiao's doing he's doing like G Money in New Jack City and doing a side deal with Ice-T, and he's trying to make the Amir Khan fight. It's always business. It's never nothing personal. Sit your $5 ass down before I make change. So I don't know what's going on with the whole Pacquiao versus Amir Khan fight. They're talking about on Twitter, you know what I mean? It's just, boxing is crazy, and it gets to a point where it's like, who do you trust when different people in the camps, the promoter saying one thing, Michael Conks is saying another thing, Pacquiao's doing his own polls on Twitter and tweeting that he's fighting Khan. As far as Kell Brook and Amir Khan, I mean, I told you guys myself, it's a fight I definitely wanted to see a couple years ago, but so much has changed, and it's like we still haven't got it. So like Kell Brook sounds like, that's where I'm at with it. I mean, I don't really care anymore. It's like we waited so long and so much has happened since. If it would have happened right after when they were on Sky Sports. See, I do agree with Kell Brook. I think Amir Khan did some things or said some things, and initially he was the one that kind of kept moving the goalpost. Like, for example, I remember when they were on Sky Sports and he was like, Kell, you remember what happened in sparring? Fight someone of note, fight a champion, fight a name like a Bradley or somebody, and then I'll fight you. And Kell Brook did do that. He came across the pond from the UK, just like Amir Khan traveled to DC, Lamont Peterson's backyard, to have that fight, that title fight, right? And he beat Sean Porter, who was undefeated at the time. And that was a good win. And then Amir Khan said something else like, oh, I'm not giving him the fight. Him and Eddie Hearn are disrespectful. I'm not giving no disrespectful person to fight, and this and that. So I don't know. At the end of the day, it didn't happen. Khan got knocked out brutally by Canelo at a higher weight. So where it's at for me is the Errol Spence Jr. fight with Kell Brook. I mean, if Kell Brook and Khan fight later down the line, that's great. It is what it is. But I mean, the fight I really want to see is Spence, because even though Triple G stopped Kell Brook, it wasn't the same type of stoppage. I mean, obviously the eye was bad, so he had to take the time off to repair and recover, but it's still not the same as, like, I mean, Amir Khan was knocked out like cold, and Kell Brook, even though he started taking some punishment, he was still on his feet, and he's undefeated at welterweight. So if he can make the weight comfortable, I mean, he showed a good skill level against Golovkin, but Golovkin and Errol Spence are two different fighters, two different weight classes, two different styles and everything. So I can't keep saying it. I'm just looking forward to this fight. This is a good fight, and I like that Spence is confident, and I like Kell Brook is confident, because at the end of the day, this is what makes 50-50 fights great, when no one wants to take a step back, or nobody wants to get broken down, and both have insane willpower and try to push themselves and will themselves through this fight. So I'm looking forward to an explosive fight. Based on the two styles, I don't really see how it could backfire and not be an entertaining fight from my perspective. As far as Kell Brook talking about fighting Keith Thurman, I would love to see that. But like I said, I'm giving Spence a real shot in there. I don't know 100% that he beats him, but I'm leaning towards him, right? So before you even think about Keith Thurman and unification, you got this man down monster, Errol Spence Jr. So you definitely have to, I wouldn't look too far past that to look at Keith Thurman. But obviously Kell Brook says he wants the big money fights and stuff like that. So if he gets past Errol Spence, then great. And let's see the Keith Thurman fights. Keith Thurman, I think he's taking a tough schedule. He fought Sean Porter, who was once beaten, had a tough fight, a war, and then he just fought Danny Garcia, right? And Danny Garcia started coming alive in the second half for the championship rounds or whatever. And I think he deserves a softer touch, or maybe like a Lamont Peterson, which is his mandatory. A guy who, I mean, if he didn't get knocked out by Porter and Danny Garcia, I don't know if Peterson has the power to knock out Thurman, but he hasn't had that many fights at welterweight. He only had like 1.5. Danny Garcia was at a catch weight at like 143, and then obviously his last fight versus David Avanesian. But I would love to see that Peterson versus Thurman next. I think that's the type of fight he should aim for. And, you know what I mean, just get that mandatory out of the way. And then Thurman and the winner of Spence versus Brook should be looking in the future towards unifying. Let me know what you guys think. Drop it in the comment section. Make sure you share the video, like the video as always. Hate, comment, and subscribe. Till next video is Ego signing off. So if you enjoyed this video and want more content like this on the channel, you can show your appreciation by going to the PayPal donate button or the YouTube support button, and you can donate any amount that you feel is equivalent to the value of this video. Much more to come. Thank you guys for your support. Boxing Ego, the future of boxing.